Pax Dei just dropped a pretty huge update for us, an update that covers combat and PvP and even how it is being inspired pretty damn heavily from classic MMOs that may have had things like open dungeons that aren't freaking instants. Let's get into all that they said in the update and why I'm actually even more excited about Pax Dei now than I was before. We'll start with this one. Pax Dei is going to have a holy trinity. You'll have your traditional tank, healer, and DPS roles, which for many, seeing how many MMOs coming out have been abandoning this for a do-it-all character, this is a huge sigh of relief. Thank fuck. Finally, I can relax. They will have an aggro system for players to manage endurance for running, climbing, swimming, chopping, and crucially, attacking. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out in practice to see if they go with a sort of auto attack approach with endurance for specials, or if it'll be more action oriented. The type of combat between tab, target, and action was not specified in this update. But there is another MMO out there right now that maybe we could look at for some potential tie here, because they utilize a system where endurance is a factor in both attacking and movement. And that's Elder Scrolls Online, which has stamina that's used for sprinting, blocking, and special stamina-based attacks. Now, as much as this did not go into anything specific about whether it's going to be tab, target, or action combat, I think we can kind of get a little bit from previous updates, from things we've seen in videos, that they're leaning towards a sort of action combat, though perhaps not something terribly like in-depth, since we have seen them use a tablet with a simple remote control with XYZ buttons on there. So I think, and we've seen a little bit of like aiming with the bow and arrow. So I think you just kind of assume that we're going to have some kind of sort of action combat, maybe a hybrid style that has worked very well for games in the past, like Guild Wars 2 and Elder Scrolls Online. That's kind of where my head is at when I'm thinking about what the combat could be like. If you have other details on it, just go ahead and let us know in the comment section below. But getting back to the things that we actually know about Pax Dei and the Holy Trinity. Having a Holy Trinity and having essentially class roles doesn't actually mean that we're going to have classes. Hold with me for a second here, because you do still make conscious decisions on how to build your class or whatever you want to call it. They are just not going to be locking it behind, let's say, a cleric and a warrior. And you make these decisions based off of the items that you equip on your character. Now, honestly, this one I'm a little bit less excited about. This whole idea of items being so tied to what your character does in the game. It's essentially what Albion Online does. It's just not something that I personally enjoy, because it feels like it puts more emphasis on the item and less emphasis on the character. Although they are doing something a little bit different here that might help with that character identity still. We'll get to that in just a sec. But honestly, I was still kind of hoping that this would be more of a Ultima Online style thing where you trained up skills, and in doing so, that was what you had. So even if you lost all of your gear, you still had those skills to fall back on. Although, honestly, now I come to think of it, you didn't have items in Ultima Online, you were still kind of screwed no matter how skilled up you were. But they actually gave us some examples of how this is going to work in game. For example, combining full plate armor with an item called the Thunderous Visage, which allows a player to trigger an aggro gaining ability in concert with the Soothing Choker, an item that grants the ability to lull enemies. This sounds like the perfect tank puller combo. Lull these enemies, use the aggro gain on this one, lock the aggro on you, pull it back into your group, and lay waste to it. Sounds kind of like a Shadow Knight or a Bard, I guess, in EverQuest. But they also mentioned that player with the full plate, they could drop the plate leggings and add in leather leggings that have a heal spell attached to them, or a ring called the Hypnotic Band, which allows players to mesmerize, which to me sounds awesome, because maybe mesmerize would be kind of like a CC role in a way. I don't know how extensive that ability to mesmerize can be, but hearing it is still cool and exciting. But I remember how I was saying that they're doing something a little bit different. It's not just the items that are going to be telling you what your class is, because there's still some skill requirements that are going to be attached to some items that will just simply not be usable unless certain skills are at a certain level, or some items that gain in power as you work up certain skills. In some ways, it's kind of like an inversion or like a twist on the Ultima Online and Albion Online models, creating this kind of hodgepodge of skill-based requirements that are using items, and items are what grant the class, especially because it's possible that you might lose some of those items, either through destruction, because some of the items are going to have durability and will break, or by people looting them. PvP looting. But hold on, because if that terrifies you, it's probably not as bad as you think. We'll get to that at the end of the video when we talk about PvP, because we did actually get a couple hints on it. But let's first talk about the durability, because the durability is tied to something very specific to this game, and that's that all the items in game, literally all the items, are going to be crafted. That's something that they specifically said in this update. While currently in their friends and family build of the game, some magic items can drop from powerful foes. That is not the long-term goal. Instead, they plan to have one of the main rewards from PvE being collecting of rare resources that are then used to craft high-level items. And I get this, I really do. I get the idea of making basically itemization come from crafting, because it makes balance easier. It makes balancing between what would essentially have been crafting and loot drops easier to manage, and it makes it easier for players in a lot of ways, or at least if this is the way they go, to make it where you can kind of go for the same creature and say one character wants this one item A, the other wants item B, and the other one wants item C. Well, potentially you could have craft material A work for all three of those items, really making it a little bit easier for players to get the things that they want, instead of having to kind of deal with an RNG that so many of us have for years playing older MMOs. But there's a thing with that I've always enjoyed, a tie to the lore of the item, a tie to that excitement when you first get an item and you can immediately equip it. You take it from the cold dead corpse of that Afridi or dragon, and then you just put it right on immediately. And there's something really fun and satisfying about that. And then having to add in the step of, you get this, you kill the dragon, and then you get its scale, and you take its scale to the blacksmith, and the blacksmith turns it into a piece of armor. It's still cool, but doing that every single time can be a little bit annoying. You know, we'll see how it plays out. I just wish there was a little bit more balance. Like, yeah, have the dragon scale, have that really cool dragon scale, but why not also just have like a little stabby dagger, you know? Just something to make it a little bit more balanced. maybe it's just like the need for like an immediate like dopamine hit. Just like, I need that. I need to not have to, you know, go pay someone to craft it for me. I need to, you know, like, oh, I have to wait until this person logs on to do this. It's that immediate gratification need, I guess. Instant gratification. That's a weird way to look about it. They also added a tantalizing little hint, though, that there will be certain skills that may influence loot tables. But they didn't divulge any further information than that, just that there could be skills that will influence the type of things that are dropping, really the type of materials that are dropping. But here's where I get the most excited and happy about this game, besides, I guess, the Holy Trinity and how excited I was with that. Their dungeons are going to be open. The lengthy post explains that dungeons where you'll be obtaining all this loot are not instants. They are open dungeons where you will encounter other parties that may also be searching for the exact same loot. This brings back the open world dungeons of early World of Warcraft, but perhaps more specifically EverQuest, which really early on leaned very, very heavily into these open world dungeons, these contested dungeons. This adds its own version of competition, something that a lot of players who who focus on PvE games, and or a lot of players that play PvP specifically tend to say, like, in PvE games there's this lack of competition. And I think a big part of that is the instancing of dungeons, which has taken away some of that competition. But there is a balance that has to be struck. You have to find a way to make sure that while there is competition, people aren't sitting around bored because there's nothing to do because the one dungeon is completely full. There needs to be a balance to where competition exists, but so does the ability to do things. But there's still more classic inspiration coming, because death in this game is going to be something you want to avoid. When you die, all equipment is going to be left on your corpse, and you'll need to retrieve them. And that also brings us back to PvP, because they did say that some items, in instance where PvP is involved, will be lootable from your corpse, and also lootable by allies. That one's an interesting one. The post itself wasn't specifically about PvP, but we still got a lot of big details that greatly expand on what we knew about it before. The PvP in Pax Dei is not going to be open PvP. As they put it, Pax Dei will always be based off of consent. How this plays out, though, might be something that will please both PvP enthusiasts and PvE enjoyers. Home valleys in Pax Dei, where you'll have your home, are safe areas. Your home cannot be damaged by other players. The village and its surroundings are all safe. Instead, Pax Dei will have dedicated PvP areas called contested provinces, which will contain unique resources that cannot be harvested elsewhere. They specify here that unique doesn't necessarily mean best, and other areas will contain unique resources as well. But entering a PvP area will automatically flag you for PvP and remove it when you leave. I think this sounds a lot like how Albion Online does it with their different zone system, but it does sound like they're thinking more in ways of how they're trying to balance. It's not the best things are in a PvP area only, but perhaps unique items are there and unique items are in a PvE area as well. Later on, they'll be giving us more details on PvP, something that we can look forward to, but it does sound like they're trying to find that balance. And that thinking about it this early is something I'm happy to see that they're doing. A way of trying to both offer meaningful PvP while also considering that a lot of players don't like to be randomly attacked when they don't want to engage in PvP. The whole hardcore PvP scene is a small scene within the MMO genre. There are people that love that type of game, but there's a much larger group of players that generally don't. This is how they put it in their own words. We are confident that this initial setup will already provide opportunities for a lot of fun encounters for the more aggressive members of our community, while also allowing them to meaningfully contribute to the social fabric of the game. That's what we've got from this meaty update on Pax Dei. For me, seeing some of these details roll out, getting a better idea of more of how the game will function has me excited. I love that there will be a holy trinity as well as the ability to craft your builds. I'm not a huge fan of item-based skills, but there are at least other examples of successful games that have done this. I think the way that they're approaching PvP will need to be refined to ensure PvP is rewarding enough to encourage people to go into these contested areas, but I appreciate that they're thinking of the whole population of the game and not trying to singularly cater to one or the other hardcore playstyle. In some ways, it sounds a little bit like RVR lakes in Warhammer Online. Just hope that they work out a hell of a lot better than that. And then the open dungeons, yes, thank you so much for the open dungeons. Perhaps one of the single greatest contributors to pushing players out of socializing in MMOs has been instancing, and with Pax Dei already looking to be a very socially driven MMO, it makes sense to just keep everyone within the same world and not locked off in instances. And that's knowing that they're aiming for about 7,000 players per server. It sounds really intriguing as long as they can find the balance between competition and overcrowding, which is not going to be easy. I don't envy them. But what do you think? After this big update, are you more excited about Pax Dei or are you less excited about Pax Dei? Let us know down in the comment section below, because I'm really interested to see what you think and if this is good to you or not. My name is Redbeard Flynn, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. Dude, I need a haircut. My hair's like going all just a flock of seagulls. Look at that shit. Okay, we're putting on a hat for this video.